Good morning and welcome to the December 2019 MTA board meeting.
To Veronica, I didn't know this was your last board meeting. I was hoping you could stay on a little longer. I enjoyed watching you embarrass Tom Messina years ago. That's another story. To Robert Foran, thank you for that presentation you made at the previous board meeting. It shows the MTA executive director has a one-track mind and a negative attitude. How he behaved at City Hall, which became the bingo hall, former home to ECW, also proves he has a one-track mind and a negative attitude. How he treated me at a previous board meeting also proves that. How he treated me in the previous month also proves he's unconcerned about the MTA, which is why I could call it money thrown away, not Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Last 16 years, I saw 7 executive directors. I saw Kathy Lab, who could pass for Penelope Pitstop. I saw Elliot Sander, who could pass for Michael Bloomberg. I saw Jay Walder, who could pass for Frank Perdue. I saw Joe Loda, who could pass for Wes Craven. I saw Uncle Tom Prendergast, who could pass for King Kong Bundy. And now I'm seeing someone who looks like Dusty Rhodes without Sapphire, Bubba Ray Dudley, and Ted Turner without Jane Fonda. So, based on what I've seen so far, I feel it's time for, I feel the MTA executive director, the current MTA executive should resign. He should just throw in the towel like the Golden Boy R. Scarlett, which did for Bob Bagley at Massacre many years ago. Because he's not cutting it. He succeeded his predecessor in the last 6 to 8 months, and what has he done? Nothing. Nothing but cut me off at a board meeting and then ask the MTA Police Department to help him move on his parade. That's wonderful.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lisa Dagley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. We once again extend our best wishes to Commissioner Vanderpool, and also wish to thank Helene Fromm and Midori Valdivia for your service to riders over the years, and we wish you both well. The actions that the board will take today, most significantly around the financial plan, will have a far-reaching effect on riders for years to come. We continue to urge no cuts to service. At the same time, the cost of operating the system that will be built into the new capital plan must be included in the conversation so we can all see the big picture. That will help us make the case for new sources of dedicated operating revenue so we don't see service cuts down the road. The capital program is not on the agenda but looms large. We'll get a presentation on the forensic audit, which will not require rewriting the 2024 capital plan, but will require new processes, including around the 20-year needs assessment and transparency, and for a 45-day comment period for which we've long advocated. So the good news is no delay to the program. Better news, an improved way of doing business that we hope will include robust public input. Also missing is any discussion of the emergency debarment regulations, which were set to expire yesterday and which we believe will be extended again. We had hoped there would finally be an opportunity for public discussion around the rules, which go beyond the legislative mandate and automatically debar contractors from doing business with the MTA, and by extension other state agencies, if their projects go over budget or over schedule by more than 10%. As we wrote in May, contractors must be held accountable, but so too must the MTA for the decisions it makes. Given the scope and complexity of the 2024 capital plan, getting the rules right is more important than ever, or we face the potential of increased costs and timelines built in by a dwindling set of contractors willing to do business with the MTA. Thank you and happy holidays to all.
My dear moderator, you didn't tell how many public speakers are today. That's an epic fail. Because at the beginning of every meeting, you should say how many public speakers are speaking for the record. I'm here today very disgraceful at Patrick Joseph Foy that last month he did an action that makes me throw fumes, confirming Anthony McCord behind closed doors. Guess what, Pat? You don't do things behind closed doors. You do things in front of the public for the record. That's why we demand transparency. And transparency is that I want. And soon enough, I'm gonna be pursuing a career. And very soon I'm going to be grilling you guys all the time up to my toes. Because the public needs information. The public needs transparency. The MTA is not money thrown away like Mr. X referred. We need accountability. We need to be stable. And we need people that are in a set of diversity. We don't need only male folks in the minority. What? Where's the minority? Where are Puerto Ricans? Where's women? I know, Veronica, I'm going to miss you so much, and I wish you luck in Delaware, and I promise you that I'm going to visit you over there to see how things are in Delaware. So that's all that I have for this month.
Good morning. I'm HP, a veteran of World War II and director of UMIWI. We represent 12,000 veterans attending college in New York City. When we first proposed to the board to establish a veterans discount, we were told you don't have the money. So our mission became to find the money by working with city and state legislators. New York City recognized the moral obligation to veterans and established the veterans discount for the first time in 100 years for those attending college in New York City. At the state level, 2 bills giving all veterans a 50% discount sat for 4 years without gaining any traction. They were rewritten and now supported by a majority of senators and assembly members from both parties. Yet the bills are not being put up for a vote. Why? Because it will cost too much money. When asked what is too much money, there was no response. The truth is, by dedicating the equivalent of 2 cents from every fare collected, it will provide enough money. Pat, I want to thank you for recognizing a veteran's service and sacrifice for country is worth 2 cents, and for agreeing to establish the discount once the bills are passed and funded. So I asked Robert Mujica and Larry Schwartz and others concerned to meet with Pap and I to discuss the merits of a discount. The public and state legislators agree there should be one, to include in the governor's budget of $175 billion, the equivalent of 2 cents, as recognition of those who have served and sacrificed for our country is not asking too much, I think.
Good morning, MTA board. Welcome to the December edition of your full board meeting. First, I'd like to congratulate Veronica on her new job, leading the Delaware Transit. I'm not sure the name, but she's going to do great. She did great here the past three and a half years. And I remember when she was here, the day the W was restored by vote. Thanks, Andrew. She was the first speaker here, and I was number 3. And thankfully she was confirmed the following month. That month, I remember it all through May, June of 16, very clearly. So yes, that's that. Second, like I said, like I told Chairman Foy and the rest on Monday, I had to apologize. Like, I'm deeply sorry for what I said the previous month, when I was just at my peak. Like I was like furious over what happened. Like the transit night, like last night, like the previous night's delay when commuting home from Macy's. But like I said, and I also personally apologize to Sarah Feinberg. You should be one day you should be the transportation secretary. You do a heck of a lot better than Elaine Chao. Just so you know. So don't worry about that. Next, I'd like to also discuss within the next half minute or so. Let's all improve service. We need more accessibility. Andy, I know you're going to do this. You have it. The ball's in your court. Also, I'd like to also mention Monday when I talked about the 1980s B&D services, I found the map on the library, but I need to go to eBay to get it. But last but not least, have a happy holidays, happy New Year as well, and thank you all for all your hard work and doing.
Thank you.
I'll see you all in January. Depends on like my schedule and stuff, but
Thank you
I'll be
so
sure to make
much.
room.
Please
Thanks.
kindly conclude.
I want to thank all the public speakers this morning for their candor. All of the issues that have been raised this morning are important to the board and staff and everybody at the MTA. Our customers deserve reliable service, which we're in the process of consistently delivering at New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North. Substantial investment in the system, including unprecedented investment in accessibility, which is a fundamental tenet of the 2020 to 24 capital plan. And our customers also deserve to feel safe and secure in the system. At the same time, we need to balance our budget while funding these priorities, which customers who are also taxpayers deserve.
Mr. Chairman, we've spent an hour and 15 minutes this morning listening to public speakers.
All right, going on. I want to talk about a very troubling felony assault and hate crime that occurred in the past couple of days. On December 12th, Thursday, 11:40 p.m. at the Wall Street station, there was a felony assault and a hate crime inflicted on a Israeli Jewish woman. The assaulter referred to the murder of two Jewish people in Jersey City that occurred literally 2 days ago before the assault. The victim had a serious gash on her face. The encounter was recorded. Kudos to the New York Police Department Transit Bureau, which immediately responded and made an arrest. There was hateful anti-Semitic rhetoric used as part of the assault, and a statement made that the attacks on two Jersey City residents 2 days before the assault, that should have been extended and continued and made and resulted in more death in Jersey City. Again, kudos to the New York Police Department Transit Bureau. The last few weeks have been eventful. I'm proud to say we're seeing continued improvements in performance as we head into the end of the year and prepare to execute our historic 2020 to 24 capital plan. This year, great work has been done across all our agencies, and we're looking to continue and build on that in 2020. As always, we owe a great deal to our hardworking frontline employees who deliver operational excellence every day. We recognize their dedication and commitment at every agency. I note that we've reached a tentative contract agreement with TWU Local 100 since the last board meeting. We negotiated in good faith over a period of months to deliver a deal that is a win for our customers, the taxpayers, and transit employees. Right now, we're awaiting the outcome of the union's ratification process, assuming and after which the agreement would come before this board for approval next year. This contract, along with the capital plan, will allow us to advance our core mission to keep this region moving. We're continuing to focus on and improve our performance every day. Earlier this week, Andy Byford and Sally Libera announced that subway on-time performance reached 81.8% in November. We've now had 6 straight months with OTP above 80%. That's unheard of in recent years. Running times were faster on every line last month compared to the same time a year ago. Trains are getting through the system more quickly, shaving minutes off many trips. This is great news for our customers, and it's a major credit to the subway's team. On the commuter rails, on-time performance is also trending upwards. For the Long Island Railroad, it reached nearly 91% in October. Metro North did even better, with 94% of trips arriving to their destinations on time. we're all proud of the improvements we've seen on MTA buses. This week, we advanced our commitment to creating a cleaner, greener fleet by rolling out the first of our new all-electric articulated buses. We've also implemented several strategies to improve bus performance that are already paying major dividends, including the opening of the 14th Street busway and automatic bus lane enforcement. A word about Omni. Speaking of progress, we announced a major expansion of the Omni contactless fare payment into Penn Station last week. This design-build technology project remains on time and on budget. Omni's also hit its 4 millionth tap, exceeding all usage projections. At Penn Station, 96 Omni readers went live at 18 turnstile arrays serving the A, the C, and the 1, 2, 3 subway lines. This was a major milestone for us. Penn is obviously one of the busiest transit hubs in North America, with more than 160,000 people per day swiping in using MetroCards. The Omni project remains on track for all subway stations and buses to have Omni in place by the end of 2020. And by 2021, we're expecting to enable Omni for Long Island Railroad and Metro-North customers. Our goal is still to phase out the MetroCard completely by 2023. A word about transformation. We've been making steady progress on transformation. First, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Chief Transformation Officer Anthony McCord, who joins us here today for his first board meeting. Anthony, welcome. The first major initiative of our transformation plan is underway. We've commenced the process of migrating employees from across all agencies who support capital projects and centralizing those under Chief Development Officer Jano Lieber. This is the first step towards the transformation plan recommendation to establish a single organization responsible for the planning, development, and delivery of all capital projects across the MTA. This consolidation also provides a single point of capital project accountability and makes it easier to bundle capital projects into larger packages to optimize value and schedule. And most importantly, the new office centralizes prioritizing and planning to ensure the new capital plan will address the greatest needs. We've previewed the approach with great success on the L train and Long Island Railroad third track. Budget. Transformation will not only fundamentally change the way we plan and deliver infrastructure projects, but also reshape the way we work today to become a more efficient and streamlined organization. But we aren't waiting until transformation is complete to get there. In a little while, the budget and financial plan will be considered by the board at this meeting. Budgets are not just about the fiscal realities we face, but also a statement of priorities for the coming year. We recognize the tough fiscal times ahead, and this plan, through a host of measures, tackles these issues head-on. At times, that includes hard choices. The budget we presented in November and are asking you to approve today includes continued commitments to our customers and to transformation and reform. A word about 4 people who are leaving the MTA. I want to take a moment to recognize the hard work and dedication of, first, our friend and colleague, Helene Fromm. Helene has spent much of her career in public service and most of it in the MTA legal department, serving as Deputy General Counsel and Acting General Counsel, leading the MTA team on litigation matters on state and federal matters. Helene also served as Chief of Staff of the New York City Mayor's Office of Operations. Both at the City of New York and later as MTA Bus General Counsel, Helene was integral to the success of an agency that today has annual ridership of well over 100 million. Finally, as MTA Chief of Staff, Helene has handled a number of critical operational issues and worked closely with the MTA board. We thank her and will miss her leadership, professionalism, and kindness. We wish her all the best in her well-earned retirement. I'd also like to recognize Don Spuro, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer. Don started here in 1988 at TBTA, where he served in a variety of planning and financial positions and culminated his career there as president. Among many notable accomplishments, Don oversaw the implementation of open road tolling at the Henry Hudson Bridge, where it was first implemented, and the UL Carey and Queens Midtown tunnels. He has since served in a key leadership role in the development of the MTA's largest and historic 2020 to 24 capital plan, $51.5 billion, as everybody in the room knows. Don has served as a trusted advisor to many of us here at headquarters, including Bob, Foran, Ronnie Hakam, and me. We thank him for all his contributions to the MTA family and congratulate him on his well-deserved retirement. Thank you, Don. I also want to recognize Midori Valdivia, my Chief of Staff. Midori is moving on from the MTA at the end of the year. Previously, Midori served as Deputy Commissioner of Finance and Administration at the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and before that, we worked together at the Port Authority. Since joining the MTA, Midori has led some of the most important agency priorities, including the successful passage of historic legislation last session involving Central Business District tolling, a first-in-the-nation program that will not only bring environmental improvements for the region, but also deliver funding for unprecedented transit investments. Midori has also served in a key leadership role on transformation and development of the proposed historic 2020 capital plan. More importantly, she served as a thoughtful advisor, always providing a clear perspective and advocating for the best interests of the public and our customers, and been a good friend and mentor to many here, creating a genuine community across a large and diverse agency. Midori, you'll be missed by your MTA family, but we're all wishing you well in your new chapter. Thank you, Midori. Lastly, today will be the last board meeting for Commissioner Vanderpool. Veronica joined the MTA board in 2016, but has long served as a thoughtful and tireless advocate for sound transportation policy on behalf of customers and riders before that. As a board member, Veronica has consistently brought a clear vision and strong understanding of what the core MTA mission is and what makes sense for all our riders, and has always boldly and candidly shared her perspective. Her leadership and insights will be missed both at the MTA and in the region. We wish her well in her new role, and I know she'll do great things in bringing innovation and creativity to the citizens of Delaware. Veronica, thank you. All right, next item is adoption of the MTA 2020 budget and the 2020 to 23 financial plan. As I mentioned earlier, the agency's budget is designed to address the fiscal challenges the MTA faces while ensuring that our priorities to move the organization forward for our customers are met. I want to recognize the concerns a number of you raised on Monday and public speakers raised today, but do want to note the following. This budget includes continuing commitments to our customers, as the proposed budget includes A, no budget-driven service cuts, and B, projected biennial toll and fare increases which will remain below the rate of inflation. The financial plan also reflects our commitment to transformation and reform and reinvesting in operations so that the increase in performance we've seen in ridership and OTP continues. The budget is also a financial forecast to the best of our knowledge today. It includes assumptions, as every budget does. There'll be opportunities to revise this budget as part of the financial planning cycle in February, July, and November, as is the case every year, with the presentation of our financial plans. If our assumptions or forecasts need to change, we'll adjust it at that time. We're also taking concrete steps to manage issues such as overtime, including implementing the recommendations from the Morrison and Forrester report, setting up an overtime management task force, and we'll be reporting progress on assumptions set forth in the budget. One factual thing, facts are important, one factual point I want to make. A lot of speakers today spoke about 500 police officers in the subways, and I just want to talk about the 500 police officers before turning it over to Bob. As I mentioned before, there are approximately 88 unfilled positions in the police department. During the course of 2019, the following is a fact: 57 officers have resigned or retired. We expect that during the course of 2020, an additional 50 to 55 will retire. That's approximately 200. 200 obviously represents 40% of the proposed 500 officers, but it is also a 26% decline were it not filled in the total number of sworn officers in the police department. The point being that if we didn't hire new classes of police officers, we'd be short approximately 200 police officers, or a quarter of the size of the entire police department. And I think that point is worth noting. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have received the material for the budget adoptions. It's on your director's desk, and you may have it physically in front of you. I'm going to go through the staff summary and hit the highlights, because you're giving direction to the chair or to the CFO or any of our designees to take certain actions during the year. And so it's important that we go through what those actions are. First, the MTA board is required to adopt a balanced budget. The purpose of this staff summary is to secure MTA board adoption of the company 2020 financial proposed budget and the 4-year financial plan 2020 to 2023, which includes the 2019 November forecast and plan adjustments and authorization of budget and plan adjustments, including MTA policy actions as set forth in the staff summary. This document summarizes the November plan presented to the board for information purposes during the November board meeting, which projects ending cash balances of $143 million in 2019, $11 million in 2020, $33 million in 2021, with projected cash deficits of $212 million in 2022, $426 million in 2023. There are few changes since the November plan. The changes that we have taken, there is cashless pilot from the Long Island Railroad collection has been removed from the plan. In Metro North, there's a 1-year delay in terms of Rockland County bus subsidy, and then there's the cancellation of the new fair parking, the new parking fee structure at Metro North. Turn to page 1-3 of the staff summary for the highlights of the November plan, which include the implementation of the transformation plan to streamline MTA's internal processes, the fact that there's no budget-driven service cuts, that it maintains prior plan investments, the Long Island Railroad's forward plan, the bus plans of New York City Transit, MTA bus, and the way ahead for Metro North. It holds projected fare and toll increases to 4% in 2021 and 2023. It has efforts to reduce fare evasion. It anticipates renegotiation with New York City for an equitable sharing of paratransit cost, captures savings from the elimination of vacant administrative positions. There's cost avoidance through fiscal constraints placed upon controllable overtime. It addresses new maintenance requirements, the hiring of the additional MTA police officers. It fortifies our technology networks, and it achieves annually recurring savings targets, which are anticipated to be $2.5 billion a year during this event.
This is illegitimate. This is illegitimate. This is illegitimate. No one in your city believes that this is a terrible holiday because you are the bad people and we are the ones legitimizing it.
So it anticipates achieving annually recurring savings targets of $2.5 billion by the end of this year, which would increase to 2.7 through 2023, and including the transformation savings, we expect to be over 3.1 billion of annually recurring savings. Now, the recommendation of staff to the board, it is recommended that the board adopt the 2020 final proposed budget and 4-year financial plan, which includes approving the 2019 November forecast and plan adjustments. The approval of this plan will supersede prior board plan approvals for this period. I want to note that the projected 2021 and 2023 fare and toll increase proposals will require separate board actions in advance of those dates. Authorize staff under the guidance and direction of the chairman, CEO, chief financial officer, or their designees to take actions to implement the policy actions set forth. Authorize staff to draw down the unexpended 2019 general reserve, $165 million, which will be used to help balance the 2020 budget. Authorize technical adjustments to the MTA budgets and forecast on a non-material nature in the 2020 February plan. Authorize adjustments of MTA budgets and forecasts to reflect labor settlements approved from time to time by the board. Authorize staff under the guidance and direction of the chairman, CEO, the chief financial officer, or their designees, including the MTA treasurer, to take additional budget or cash management actions, as has been done in the past budgets, to draw on the general reserve and or make budget adjustments to respond to unexpected expenses and or revenue subsidy shortfalls, and other actions including advancing of the bridges and tunnel operating surplus, use of MTA MRT2 corporate account monies, use of payroll mobility tax and replacement funds and MTA aid, authorize staff acting under section 1266 6-A of the Public Authorities Law to enter into interagency loan agreements among the MTA and its affiliates and subsidiaries. And I should note that if a loan is taken, it must be repaid by the end of the succeeding calendar year, and then use the stabilization reserve and provision for prompt payment of contractual obligations. Mr. Chair, that concludes the summary of the staff summary.
Well, let me just make one factual thing, before I call on Commissioner Feinberg. I'll just note, page I-8 notes that total fare box revenue for 2020 is approximately $6 billion, which obviously is a huge source and an important, irreplaceable source of revenue for the MTA.
Mr. Chair, if I may have just a few moments to give a parting comment. So I've been at 275 meetings, over 550 hours, over 117 days in 3.5 years. And that is the minimum. That is just the number of board meetings and committee meetings, and that does not account for all the conversations we all have and all the meetings we all have and all these other offline discussions that happen. And I do want to take the opportunity to thank the people who are often not seen at the MTA, or who are seen but are not often acknowledged. And those are people like Adrian, who take care of everything. In fact, Adrian was the first one to run behind the, the person who was running around here. There's people who are taking notes and minutes, and all of you back there who are there just in case you have to give a 5-second explanation or answer to any of the questions that we have. And those of you who are in the audience, we have the best press. The press corps is on top of these issues. You are sharp, you're accurate, you're balanced. You don't let things slip by. And having come from the advocacy community, but also watching how you have helped change this discussion from the MTA being all these different iterations that it has been over the years, and the media has helped educate and inform the public in that way and made a savvier public. I want to thank all of you, Chairman Foy, and so many of the staff, and my fellow board members. I don't agree with a lot of you many times, but I respect all of you. I think you bring a lot of contribution and value. I want to thank my fellow commissioners that I've served with, Polly Trottenberg, Carl Weisbrot, David Jones, and Bob Lynn, and I have been in good company. Two more things. I do want to thank Mayor de Blasio. He was the first elected official who put forth a slate of people of color and women, all at the same time, not piecemeal here and there. His full slate in 2016, or really 2015, was 2 men of color and me. And I really want to thank him. I also want to thank Governor Cuomo for pushing me through. He could have said no. And in fact, someone once said to me, "It is a miracle, Veronica, that you are on the board." And then lastly, I want to end by saying diversity is important. We've all talked about it. I don't think anyone would disagree that diversity is important. It's not enough to put lip service to what diversity means. In March, I talked about me not being the only one who's checking off all these boxes of diversity. And since then, there has been changes. When I made that comment, 18% of the board were women, and now 39% of the board are women. And diversity is incredibly important because it's the lens, it's the perspective. It's not, we need that around this table. We need a board that is reflective of our writing constituency and our customers. And whomever fills this seat, I hope will do justice to that issue of diversity, to that issue of equity and balance, and be pragmatic and fair. There's a lot to support and defend of the MTA and the staff. There's a lot that we should hold this team accountable for, and our elected officials. And I implore all of you in the advocacy community, make sure who fills this seat is independent and is autonomous and is not afraid to run against the grain, because that is when a lot of my no votes have not necessarily made a difference, but I have used this forum to raise issues. And we need to have board members who are not afraid to do that and not afraid to be that one lone vote, which sometimes I have been. I've not often voted no, in fact. My record shows I've most frequently voted yes, but I have not been afraid to vote no. So thank you for the support, the intellectual capacity that you all have shared, the commentary, and your constant advocacy from all of you on that side to all of you on this side. Thank you.
Commissioner.
I was going to say some nice things also, but I love your three boxes is going to be living on in memory, but I want you to have the last word, so I'm not going to say anything else.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Let me start by saying I think that 2019 was a great year for MTA customers and is ending in a great way for MTA customers. Ridership is up on New York City Transit and the Long Island Railroad, according to APTA, one of the few Long Island Railroad, New York City Transit, one of the few public agencies in the country where that is true for the third quarter. On-time performance, we've talked a lot about extraordinary gains at New York City Transit. Terrific performance, Metro North 94% and nearly 91% for Long Island Railroad. Record capital plan approved, $51.5 billion, congestion pricing and MTA reform passed by the state legislature in the legislative session. You just saw today the budget approved for 2020. No budget-driven service cuts. No change, rather, in the policy with respect to toll and fare increases. In 2021 and 2023, it is assumed in the financial plan that they'll increase at a rate below inflation. And lastly, state legislature passed transformation legislation as part of the MTA reform. We are executing against that and are counting on $1.6 billion of transformation savings. New leadership on the part of Anthony McCord, who's now on board, and the COO will be joining us on the first of the year. And a very exciting time to be here. And with that, happy to take your questions. Please.
The meeting, there we go. Sarah Feinberg had said that the MTA police are going to be different from the NYPD. This is a whole different thing, and that we should address policing complaints about them to the mayor's office, to the NYPD themselves. The mayor has said that he's fine with this police increase as long as they work with the NYPD. So, I mean, who's going to be in charge down in the subways?
Well, look, I ought to say the following. There's a great deal of experience in New York with more than one police force. I worked at the Port Authority for a while. Port Authority's got a police force. The relationship between the Port Authority police and the NYPD is extraordinarily strong. The same is true with respect to the MTA police. And there are lots of other police forces I'm not mentioning, including federal. There's a great deal of collaboration and cooperation already between the MTA and the MTA police and the NYPD in terms of things like tabletop exercises, full-scale exercises, planning, etc. Obviously, whenever you've got more than one police force, you've got the possible risk of blue on blue, and there's color for the day and other protocols that are in place to deal with that. So this is not a new thing. The MTA police and the NYPD work closely and cooperate and collaborate closely, and I expect every reason to expect that will continue.
I just had one.
Yeah, please.
Just changing gears really quickly. The budget's out of the way, so can you give us any update on what the status of the TMRB is and how the appointments from the MTA board to it are going to work?
And we've got a long list of people who've expressed interest and others that are on the list. I would expect those appointments will be made in the new year. David.
Yeah. On another board issue, the CPRB, the Capital Program Review Board, has yet to meet. It has to meet by the end of the year, I believe. So my two questions are, is it going to meet? And if it doesn't, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm the wrong guy to ask the CPRB when they're going to meet. That question ought to be directed to the chairman of the CPRB. What was the second part?
If they don't meet by the end of the year, as my understanding is that the capital program moves forward by default. And I'm just wondering, your take on that. Is that...
Look, I think
process, right?
my expectation is that the capital plan will get approved. I'm not going to speak to how it's done procedurally, whether it's a default passage of time, et cetera. I do think legislative leaders and their staffs have been briefed extensively, as with respect to the mayor, obviously, and his staff, extensively with respect to the capital plan. We're proud of it. We're advocating for it, and we'll take as much time, whether it's in December or January, to explain it to all interested stakeholders. And obviously, elected officials in Albany and City Hall are high on that list.
Got it. And if I could get one just logistical question about the police force expansion.
Yeah.
You previously said that 88 of the 500 officers were through attrition.
No. Well,
So
what
now
I
it's
said was
200?
no. What I said was 88 were unfilled positions. There's unfilled vacancies and attrition. I reported that in 2019, the year the year's about to close, 57 officers have resigned or retired. And our expectation, and that's about 7 or 7.5% of the police force, something like that. Our expectation is that in 2020, a number like 50 to 55 will resign or retire. Could be higher, could be lower, but based on past experience, that's the number.
And so does that mean that ultimately, by how many officers is the force expanding? Because it's around 700 now. Are we going up to 1,200? Or are we going up to 1,000?
No. Well, first of all, it's a little higher than 700, right? There are 88 unfilled positions. There's a total of 200 if you take the 88, the 57 that resigned or retired, and if you assume 55, which may be at the high end of the range of 50 to 55, and the number in 2020 will be what it is. So that's 40%, right, of the 500. And it's about 26% of the existing police force. And one of the points I tried to make here is if we don't have additional police hires, and I think one of the many important things of the board's approval of the budget is it enables us to fill those unfilled positions and to deal with the retirements and resignations.
So are you expanding the force by 500 officers or 300 officers?
Well, look, on a net basis, the first hires of any new class, whether it was, and happily it's now authorized as a result of today's votes, are going to fill unfilled positions and deal with retirements and resignations. One of the positive impacts of that is a likely reduction in police overtime. Vin.
So I guess first, can you elaborate on where the majority of the current MTA police force is allocated, and where if there's a breakdown yet on where the new police would go in terms of transit, in terms of the railroads? And then I had
Vin, on that, we made it clear the MTA police covers the entire system, including Long Island Railroad and Metro North. There are obviously significant numbers at Penn Station and Grand Central Terminal, and they're on subways as well. I'm not going to speak to future deployment because that will be determined by the leadership of the police department when those men and women join the MTA Police Department.
And just to follow up, there was a lot of talk today about racial biases among the NYPD, and there was a point where Board Member Feinberg said, well, that's an NYPD issue, you should be going to the mayor for that, but it's also I would argue a national issue. So how can you say that these new cops wouldn't reflect the policing that's been going on?
I don't think it's fair to say that Commissioner Feinberg was overlooking the fact that this is a regional and a national issue. I think she's very focused on that, but I think the issues she identified are real, especially with respect to the crime stats that she's cited, and obviously a sexual assault, a felony assault like the hate crime I described at the beginning of the meeting. One is too many. Clayton.
If transit worker assaults are up and if crime is up on the transit system, point blank, why is a deployment of 500 additional officers an effective way to address that? Why not look at the larger issues that lead to more emotionally depressed people on the platform, more mentally ill people who are assaulting transit workers, and the et cetera?
Well, look, the MTA does transit and transportation. We don't set or implement homeless policy. Policies set at the state level. The city has a responsibility, a statutory and constitutional and legislative responsibility for providing shelter and other homeless services under state regulation. I'm not an expert on that. So we've got a mission. Our mission is to provide transportation services, as I've said a bunch of times and believe it strongly. Part of providing transit and transportation services is providing a safe and secure environment for our customers and workers. That we're very focused on.
You're confident that these cops will make the environment safer for your customers and workers?
Yeah, I thought the short answer is yes, absolutely. Dana.
Pat, do you think it was a mistake in 1995 for City Hall to merge the transit police with the NYPD?
I don't have a view on that, Dana. I've read a lot of the history I think right now that merger, has been in place for a long period of time. It's part of the landscape. I don't have I don't have a view on that question.
And if Bill Bratton is concerned about the sort of recreation of a separate force to police the subways, amongst other things, then why wouldn't MTA leadership be concerned as well?
Well, I think that former Commissioner Bratton's statements do two things. One is they support the case for additional police officers in the subway system and in transit in general. And obviously, Commissioner Bratton has long service in the Transit Bureau and in the NYPD, as a senior leader and ultimately a commissioner. I have a great deal of respect for that. But revisiting the 1995 debate, which is obviously affected by the political winds of the time and elected officials at the time, I don't think it's terribly productive. It's part of the policing landscape right now.
But you are revisiting it by sort of reversing course.
No, clearly not, right? One police force is 35,000 men and women strong. The MTA police department is a small fraction of that. The NYPD has far more men and women in the Transit Bureau than the entirety of the MTA police department. So we're not revisiting that. But what we are doing is adding police officers, and we believe to the MTA police, and we believe that's going to help us provide a safe and secure environment for our customers and our employees, and that's our focus. NJ.
Thanks, Pat. One of your public speakers today said that by adding the police officers, you are militarizing the subway. So I'm wondering first if that's a phrase you would use.
I think
if not,
I think that's absurd.
And if not, right, what would you say to people who would use that phrase, like that man and others?
Well, look, I thought look, I understand first the issue's been polled, and somebody wrote a piece about it during the week. Even the speaker who came from the advocacy group, I thought it was extraordinary when she reported that 79% of the people, and obviously they were hoping for a different result, 79% of the people surveyed in Queens supported additional police officers in the subway stations, and had not quite as high but similarly high support for it. She kind of, I guess in Ken Lovett's phrase, kind of buried the lead there, right? Because the data she cited was kind of inconsistent with what I believe was the political argument she wanted to make.
The phrase militarizing the subway, I mean, that's a strong phrase, and you had one person say it, but you had a lot of other people sort of echo that.
I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong factually. I think it's wrong rhetorically. And the 500 officers I just described, right? There are 88 unfilled positions. 57 officers resigned or retired in 2019. We expect, and it'll be higher or lower undoubtedly, but a range of between 50 and 55 retiring or resigning in 2020. The officers, the 500 are going to cover Long Island Railroad and Metro North as well. And probably per shift, you're talking about, and don't hold me to this, a number of between 40 to 60 officers per shift. That is hardly the militarization of the subways. And I think what it is a significant increase on the number of highly trained, highly skilled officers. Most of the people who are being hired in the first tranches of the new class are already sworn police officers themselves working for other police departments, and it is going to be a significant advance in providing a safe and secure environment for our customers. That's what it's about. Dan.
So the phrase you used was absurd, and you don't really understand why some people might feel less safe with more police officers in the system.
I don't, and the advocate citing the data from Queens that said 79% of people in Queens supported additional police officers in subway stations, I thought spoke for itself. Dan.
Pat, so there are going to be a certain number of MTA police officers deployed to the subway, and I think we know traditionally subway was not their turf. They were commuter rails, right? Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
Look, they have.
My question, though, I just want to make sure we're agreeing. So my question is, why is the NYPD Transit Bureau, in its numbers, not sufficient enough that you feel there are gaps that needed to be plugged with MTA PD? And did you ever bring these concerns to the Transit Bureau chief about holes in coverage or things getting out of hand in terms of homeless safety, assaults on transit workers?
Well, look, I'll cite one particular crime that obviously resonates here at the MTA. They all do. But the TWU has provided credible data that there's been a significant increase in assaults on transit workers on subways and on buses. That was validated by, I think it was at our September meeting, where a number of TWU members spoke about the increase in attacks. Attacks on transit workers, whether subways or buses, is a Class D felony. We're going to argue hard with prosecutors and police forces, every police force that touches this, that ought to be enforced rigorously where the kind of the predicate facts of a Class D felony are established.
No, Pat, my question was not that there are assaults on transit workers and they're up. I've seen the data. I take it as, the data it is. My question is, why isn't the NYPD and its numbers and the Transit Bureau sufficient to address those assaults on transit workers?
Look, the Transit Bureau does a fine job. We've made a decision that in order, and as the budget director pointed out, it's 1/3% of the budget, that to provide a safe and secure environment, which is, we believe, our responsibility, that this is a prudent, reasonable thing to do, and the board today agreed with that.
But that doesn't answer the question.
Alfonso.
It begs the question, why isn't the NYPD sufficient enough? You say they're fine. Why isn't it sufficient enough?
Dan asked and answered. Alfonso.
Hi, Pat. I think it was Commissioner Herman talked about the rarity of seeing a police officer on a commuter train or a commuter train station. I know you've said you're going to leave the specifics on deployment up to police leadership, but can you share your vision of how much these new officers can make a difference on Long Island Railroad stations? The problems you've heard from commuters there?
Well, I not only hear from commuters, I'm a daily commuter on the Long Island Railroad. I think it's appropriate that some of these new officers patrol Long Island Railroad and Metro North platform stations and trains. I think that's a good idea. That'll be one of the results here.
Chairman.
Yeah, please. Sorry.
I would be remiss not to ask a question about the police.
Thank you.
Posters, signs went up in the fall that the MTA was hiring 500 officers. So two-part question. One is, how many have already been hired as part of this 500? And the second part is...
So Tim Minton will get back to you. I don't have that fact at my fingertips.
And I have one more policing, then another related. But did anything Board Member Jones say today resonate with you about the history of policing communities of color being targeted for fare evasion? 90% of the arrests for fare evasion are people of color. Did any of that?
Yeah, of course. I think Commissioner Jones, since his presence on the board preceded me joining here, I think he's been clear and consistent about it. I've spoken to him about it personally a number of times. I think, as I understand it, Commissioner Jones today was describing his interactions and meeting with the prior MTA Police Department leadership and the prior Transit Bureau leadership. And I think Commissioner Jones is exactly right. And the goal is to do this on a racially non-discriminatory basis, period, across the board. Paul.
Yep. Can I ask just one more question
please.
about police? Sorry. As far as funding for Access-a-Ride, the operating budget is asking the city to pay for half. They've said they won't pay for half. So what does that mean? Is there going to be a cut in Access-a-Ride service? How are you going to cover that? If the city won't pay half, they'll continue to pay.
There is not going to be a cut in paratransit service. Discussions on that issue are continuing, and I expect would continue into January. Paul.
Hi, Pat. I just have a question about the numbers and the budget in relation to the police. You talked about the 88 unfilled positions. So are we to believe that originally, like before the decision to hire the 500 officers, that the the 88 unfilled positions weren't budgeted for in earlier financial plans?
Paul, it's an excellent question. Actually, they were budgeted in the July financial plan and approved by the board in the July financial plan. I probably was remiss in not pointing that out to my colleagues today.
Okay.
That was part of the July financial plan.
So then when the decision was taken to hire, as we were told, the 500 officers, we were told it would cost an additional $250 million. Is the $250 million inclusive of the 88, or are we actually talking about $250 million for just over 400 new hires?
No, it's the 250 is for the 500 group of 500.
Inclusive of the 88 unfilled. So it was actually less.
The 88, right, is a use of the resource. But it's 500 to 250 over the 4-year period.
And then as far as the headcount goes, I believe the headcount currently is about 780. Does that sound about correct?
I was going to say what's the number?
783 according to Tim.
Thank you.
So what is the target headcount then? When the 500 have been hired, what will the final MTA police headcount be?
Well, look, it's a moving, it moves. And I'll just give you one fact, right? I reported 57 resigned and retired in 2019. We expect 50 to 55 in 2020. I would think that my belief, I think shared by police experts, a number of police officers in this department and others entered after 9/11. So that would be in 2002, 2003. I think it's police officers, many of them retire after 20 years of service because of pensions and other things. So you could see accelerated, retirements. It's going to be a changing number, and that's why Tim had the up-to-date 783. It's going to change.
Right, but the budget there is for a specific headcount. So understanding that people come, people go, people retire, there must be Bob, when he has his numbers, he must know how many people he's accounting for.
Sure. There's a number of police that can be tracked back to the number in the financial plan. For 2020, 21, 20, I don't have it in my fingertips. We can get it for you.
But does Bob have an idea how many police there'll be?
We'll come back to you. We'll get it for you. There's a specific number of police that obviously tracks to that number.
Okay. Thank you.
Christina?
To you. So the number 500, adding 500 officers, and whatever target number does exist, where do you get that number from? That number of officers is what's needed to deal with the remaining crimes that we're still seeing every year.
That was after discussions with police leadership and taking into account the resignations, the retirement, the needs. As your colleague from Newsday and I just discussed, there's a need for additional policing on Long Island Railroad and Metro North, stations, platforms, trains, etc. And that number was derived after consultation with police leadership.
And I mean, given the concerns that were raised today about racial bias and who feels safe or who doesn't feel safe around police, on the subway, is there any plans moving forward for how to take those concerns into consideration?
Well, the answer is yes. There will be bias training. There will be reducing attention in terms of interventions. The NYPD and the MTA Police Department do that already.
Right, so how is that any different from what NYPD, we already see?
Well, look, the first group of officers that are being hired are trained officers and experienced officers because they're coming from other police departments, to a significant degree, the NYPD. And the training that the NYPD, which I think is believed to be the nation's best, is training that all these officers have received. Whatever is state-of-the-art training at the time, they'll receive.
Okay. So if people are worried about the way that NYPD treats people of color on trains now, it wouldn't be much different if they have the exact same training for the new police force and the new hires.
Well, look, the expression of dissatisfaction with NYPD training, there are some people who subscribe to that view. I personally think that the NYPD is one of the nation's finest police forces, and the commissioners past and present have been responsive to the issues, and I think we'll be going forward. Rich Lamb, you have a question?
I was just waiting for the microphone. I am curious as to whether or not you are surprised about the level of controversy about hiring new cops.
In a word, yes, period. Yes.
Thank you.
Congress passed a defense spending bill last week that will preclude you from buying highly subsidized, cheap train cars from China. There's already a lack of competition in that space. How are you going to deal with that?
Well, first, your interpretation is completely wrong. You need to look at the NDAA. We don't have any, we've not bought Chinese rail cars. We don't have any plans to do so. They're an eligible vendor, but your statement is completely factually wrong.